our next speaker, Jen Lill, came to us. How long has it been now, Jen?
1 year.
1 year ago. So she wasn't able to participate last year, but Jen is a dynamic speaker, spoke on Gen AI, bias in AI, a lot of different things. As Ben pointed out, a former educator, so she gives us an open mind from that standpoint. So ladies and gentlemen, from our Technology Strategy team, Jen Lill.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so did everybody have a good childhood? No? Yeah, me neither. I was raised by hippies, not physicists. And I'm talking like actual lived in Haight-Ashbury hippies. My father spent a year in Mexico living out of a VW bus on a vision quest. Yeah, do you know how hard it is to rebel against that? Like, don't do what I would do, eat peyote and go to the moon? Jeez, Dad, I don't have a lot of options here. So what I ended up doing was going deep into the dork forest to find my people. And we'll see if we can get this going.
Now we're on the side.
Yeah, I'm hitting it. I work in technology. So I'm the lead technology strategist for One North. I work mainly in the Adobe practice, but I'm pretty technology agnostic. And following the theme of today, so I'll be talking today about the tightrope that we walk between trends and tradition, because we get inundated, as Kat mentioned, overwhelmed with all of this information, especially around technology, and we're not sure how to handle it and move forward. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about my Chaos Muppets, which is my family. On the left there, that's us at Disney during the pandemic. Walked onto every ride. It was amazing. Notice I got custom masks for the family. The two teenagers were too cool to wear the masks. And then this was us during Halloween. During the pandemic, and we went as Futurama. They certainly keep me on my toes. So, what are we talking about when we're talking about trends versus technology? First of all, we have the market pull. Those are the trends that come from customer expectations. So, these might be capacity expectations. I know that once you could take a picture of a check and have it automatically go to your bank account. People wanted to take a picture of a receipt and have it automatically go to their expense account, right? Why can't I do that everywhere? If I can do that one place, I should be able to do it everywhere. Connectivity assumptions. People think of brands holistically. They don't understand that internally in our organizations, we're siloed. We might not talk to each other. They assume it's all one thing and it should act that way. And then usage habits, right? I got used to doing this with my previous pharmacy. I want to be able to do that with my new pharmacy. On the other side of things, though, we have the technological capabilities, which don't always have a direct usage in the market. So that might be innovations. We've talked a lot about Gen AI today. Don't really know how that fits just yet into the consumer market. Automation opportunities, like machine learning, or regulation restrictions, which really can hamper how we move forward. And in the middle of those, we have the meeting of products and services with technology. So let's examine market pull a little bit. Now, as a fun exercise, rather than use our wonderful creative team, I decided to utilize some generative AI functions. So down here, you'll see Adobe Firefly generated image. The words I used were customer expectations drive the adoption of technology needs, which resulted in this poor man having a tiny, tiny car. The balloons are nice, though. So these might be things like third-party food delivery services. And if anybody saw the expose that John Oliver did, these are still not profitable to this day. Third-party food delivery is very popular with the consumers, but no one is making any money off of it. Smart devices, streaming services, fitness trackers, and most annoyingly, next-day retail delivery. These are all expectations that our customers come to our brand interactions with, and we choose whether or not to meet those expectations. Next, we have a hammer and a nail having a religious experience. Also from Adobe Firefly. This is a hammer looking for a nail at sunset. So these might be things that are pushes from the technology. Hey guys, we came up with this cool thing. And we all go, so? VR headsets, perfect example of that. Zuckerberg tried the hardest that anybody could try to get us excited about the metaverse. We were not. Adobe created a giant object you can wear on your face for way too much money. Still, not terribly excited. 3D printing, very cool, doesn't have a lot of uses. Blockchain, still a little confusing. Self-driving vehicles, people hate self-driving vehicles. Have you guys seen the reports of them being burned in the street? That's a bit of an extreme reaction. And of course, generative AI, where we can see what it can do, but how do we use it? So, this is a technology talk, so I would like to utilize some technology today. I've got a QR code you can scan on the screen. It's also on your handout, there in the corner, if that's easier for you. If you're really slick, you can download Slido, the app, or go to slido.com, and you'll see there's a code there, 3336976. So, we're going to do a little trivia. Which of these are real examples of companies that attempted to adopt a trend and failed? The selfie toaster, the smart fork, a wearable pet translator, or the smart umbrella? Okay. Pet translator and smart umbrella, quite popular. We're negotiating. Smart fork, maybe. In actuality, it's all of them. Unfortunately. And none of them took off. Which, you know what, in actuality, I'm kind of glad that the pet translator didn't take off, because I'm pretty sure this is what that would look like at my house. This is Thor, our 95-pound pit bull. She is a girl. And this picture we call Our Lady of Perpetual Wanna Go Outside. That is Loki, our cat, and that's what happens when you let children name the pets. So, in this quote from the co-founder of Sun Microsystems, he says, "We humans think linearly, but tech trends are exponential," which creates that level of chaos that it's unpredictable. So we have to take into consideration uncertainties. This one is from Microsoft Copilot. The words are uncertainties, unpredictable sources of change. And this Thursday on Fox is U3 ? Looks terrifying. Those can be social, cultural, those can be innovation, regulatory, economic. They might be environmental changes that affect your company and your business, ethical changes, political, and then wild card, like the pandemic. Things we just don't see coming. So what are we going to do? Well, if you're familiar with the Future Today Institute and Amy Webb, which if you're not, I highly recommend you look her up, she's got a great technique she calls the axes of uncertainty. And that's where she creates a prototype scenario by using a 2x2 matrix where you place side by side a set of uncertainties and a set of trends. And then you examine each one of the quadrants to determine how they would affect your business and choose which strategies and scenarios to pursue. So as an example, let's say you were a company that created pre-made templates that were printouts for school children. You have a stock image option for your users, but you're considering utilizing AI, generative AI, because it's so popular. First, we need to look at AI generative restrictions. Some just came out from the White House. We're seeing more coming from Europe. That can really affect the way we would produce this product. And the trend would be whether or not there was a demand for AI generative images. That might be a high-level demand or low trust, as we've seen so far. Not great at it. And then you take each one of those quadrants and you determine what would be the outcome. I love examples because I'm an educator. So let's take media company Z. They are looking at the issue of the content they create is being shared in an unverified way out there in social media. It's a big problem, misrepresentation. Now, social media platforms, from the trend perspective, can either take a low level of responsibility for verifying content, or they can take a high level of responsibility. Let's look at what each one of those scenarios would look like. So if media companies have unverified content that's being shared, and social media platforms are taking a low level of responsibility, we're going to result in some things like viral misinformation, social engineering, deep fakes, and general fraud. If social media platforms take a high level of responsibility, then we see more platform-driven content monitoring. That might look like content warnings, content blocking, intrusive platform messaging that overlays the unverified content. And I'm sure anybody in here who's used social media has seen something like that. Now, what we really want as a media company is to be able to encode the content credentials into the content itself, giving us the ability to create a framework that ties the image to a title or a caption, or both, that would then give a verified instance of that content. And maybe even work with platforms to adopt that verification technology that would activate once the user interacts with the content. That would give media companies the ability to ensure their content is authenticated, and also for media creators to verify that that is their content and in the ways that they would like it utilized. That, however, puts guardrails on our solution. But that's a good thing, as Jessica mentioned. We want to look at constraints. So from this exercise, we can tell a few things. One, we need to develop an independent architecture outside of social media platform control, because we can't necessarily trust social media companies to do with the content as we wish. We need to define a metadata standard for our content, gain adoptions by other media companies. If I want to verify things from ABC, for instance, I'm not necessarily going to go to abc.com, so I need an omni-channel delivery coverage, meaning you come to me with the verification wherever I am viewing the content. And then an identity registration. That creates a key pairing for the user to verify this is my content and this is the way I would like it to be utilized. Now, going back to our first example, let's apply that. From a trends perspective, customer expectations are that news comes from a verified source. And I also expect it to be available in any channel, wherever I am. I want it to be verified. That means it comes from a trusted source, the information is authenticated, and that multi-channel distribution is possible. Then from the technologies or market push perspective, we want to be able to have it be non-platform specific. I don't want to go to abc.com in order to verify ABC information. I want it to come to me on Instagram or Facebook or wherever I am. I need to create a content library framework, and I need it to be open source so that I can get folks out there to utilize it. Now, we have technology that would allow us to do that in the form of open source LLMs and aggregated blockchain. Look at that, we found a use for it. That results in registered content with digital authentication. Now, is everybody ready for the M. Night Shyamalan twist in this story? This exists. This is Verify. Melody Hildebrandt, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Fox Corp, worked with a company called Polygon to create Verify, which is a website that can verify any Fox content. We're talking about all of Fox, right? So those are your local affiliates. Everything that comes from any of those news sources can be verified with a sign and key pairing that says, this is the content, this is the metadata for authentication purposes, I am the content owner, I can declare license controls and say who can utilize this content. And then the best part, in my view, is that they have their own GitHub repo, which means it's open source. Other users, developers, can create interfaces based on this technology. Melody specifically just released the web SDK for this, and she says she really hopes that somebody takes it and creates a browser extension. That would be perfect. If you had a browser extension, no matter what website you went to, you would see a green check mark or a star next to a piece of content that would verify that it was in fact authentic. Next question. Which burgeoning technology was the cause of a brief airline pilot shortage? This almost blew up Caleb's head when I asked him this. He was like, what? Which burgeoning technology was the cause of a brief airline pilot shortage? Was it email, Bluetooth, flip phones, or Wi-Fi? Ooh, flip phones come out of nowhere to take the lead. I practiced this with my children, and it was hilarious. The answer is email. So how is that possible? Well, paper checks, as you might remember. I was an expert in floating paper checks, by the way, in my 20s. I could get a whole refrigerator full of groceries 3 days before I had to pay for it because the paper checks had to be delivered to the banks, which means they had to go on a plane to their destination. So a plane full of paper checks doesn't have any people on it, which gives newbie airline pilots the ability to get their practice hours in. No empty planes, no practice hours means no new pilots. Luckily, Amazon fixed that for us, and now we're flying around planes full of boxes. All right, Google Bard comes in with what looks like a double album by Rush. That's Ben Magnuson came up with that one. Developing scenarios into strategies. I don't see it, honestly. So what do? If we have these scenarios that we've developed using the axes of uncertainty, then we need to find tangible and tactable ways to approach them. So that's when we run it through the strategy machine, which most of us are familiar with. You're going to do a SWOT analysis. You're going to prioritize your activities based on that analysis. Those prioritized activities become your roadmap, and then you build teams in order to make that happen. Now, take a shot for strategic first aid, or whatever that says. Notice that no one in this picture has a face. That's really unfortunate. This is Copilot again, a workplace that fosters strategic foresight. I even put it in the keyword and you couldn't spell it. It almost looks like fort shit. It's not great. It's not great. So, as many have mentioned, psychologically, safety is very important to create an environment that fosters foresight. So that means, as many have mentioned today, setting guidelines and ground rules, permissions for candor. We need to be honest with each other. Clarity is kindness. And we need to understand that conflict is both expected and welcomed. We need multiple perspectives. Multiple perspectives garner different opinions. Those opinions should clash if we're going to be productive. And finally, a shared commitment to excellence. We're all working together to create this, but we need to be able to do it in a safe way because when you're talking about the future, you can be talking about some scary stuff that could possibly happen. Okay, backcasting. This one's from Firefly. Backcasting to define a strategy. Khaled pointed out that the airplane has an ear. which is an interesting choice. Tactical forecasting is a tool that I use on a regular basis. It also can be called maturity mapping. That's where you take the concepts of innovation and time, and in relationship to today, you determine what your vision is for the future, and you reverse engineer that to determine the steps you need to take in order to get to the vision. This is also a wonderful tactic when your children make horrible choices. You can reverse engineer that. So, who's the winner? The winner of the AI Generative Image Contest is Microsoft Copilot with Alice in Wonderland comparing apples and oranges. Unfortunately, Alice has an extra finger. The poor girl. So what are our takeaways from this? Well, it's time to find balance between chaos and control. You need to utilize technology trends as a tool in your toolbox rather than a divining rod for the future. You need to think creatively. For instance, if there's a pants contest, don't wear pants. Then you don't got to worry about it. You define and prioritize your insights to assess trend readiness within your organization. You garner multiple perspectives. When the AMs and the BDs ask me who I want to talk to in an organization, I say the janitor. I want to talk to the lowest person on the totem pole, because that's probably the person who understands what actually needs to happen in order to fix something. But most importantly, please, please, please talk to your customers. I can't even tell you the amount of times I've been on teams that were trying to solution for something that when we finally released it, the customers are like, what is this? I don't want this. Like, oh, it's just 24 months of work, no big deal. Create actionable roadmaps so you can determine how to meet your future goals, and stay curious. One last question before we end. Before the American Railroad standardized time zones in 1883, how many time zones existed in North America? All right, the answer? 144. Yeah, it was like, it's noon. We have our own time zone. The sun is here. That's it. We're calling it. I work in Detroit. I live in Detroit. I work for a company that's in Chicago, as most of you know. I can't remember that there's an hour difference. There's no way I would have been able to follow 144 time zones. But just a perfect example of how we don't realize how much trends and technology together change our lives on a regular basis. Thank you very much.
Done?
Thank you.
All right. Any trend spotters that have questions based on that? Anybody's current team or business feel like they're being affected by trends right now?
Can you repeat where the axes of uncertainty came from again?
Yeah, it's the Future Today Institute that's headed up by Amy Webb. She talked pretty extensively through a series of talks at South by Southwest this year. So if you want more information, I recommend you head to YouTube.
And
No
Jen,
problem.
that whole left side had a bunch of recommended AI educational aspects.
I just thought those were cool.
Can you tell us? Where'd you come up with these?
Well, particularly for me, I thought AI generative images, as we've seen, are pretty piss poor. But there are some cool things that AI can do. And so this is a collection that I've been keeping on my desk of different tools that I've discovered that are usually free and automated.
And they're Jen approved.
They're Gen approved.
All right.
That's right.
I like Jen approved stuff. All right. Anything else? No? All right. Thank you, Jen Lill.
Thank you, everybody.